Us live from Virginia is Kwiatkowski, retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Welcome to the program, madam. Tehran says it's collecting tolls for ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but Washington is insisting that the U.S. has control over that waterway. What do you think is actually happening?
I think Tehran has the control of the waterway, and I think that they have done something very ingenious in monetizing passage through the Strait of Hormuz, which is so narrow that it's really not international waters. So they've done this thing, and Trump, I think, was very angry that he didn't think of it first. I mean, honestly, he proposed a couple weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago, that he would like to actually participate in the monetization of the Strait of Hormuz along with the Ayatollah. His thinking is very much. I think Trump actually admired what Tehran has done, but since that time, of course, he's set up what he calls a blockade, but it doesn't meet the. To me, it doesn't meet the full definition of a blockade because it's over such a broad area of water, and I think they're missing so many ships. They're not really. It's not an effective blockade, and the control is retained, I think, by Tehran.
And frankly, the U.S. has amassed quite a serious naval armada there in the Middle East, including 3 aircraft carrier strike groups. However, we see they're still stationed rather far from Iran's shores, leading many to believe the blockade is full of holes. How do you think a ship is able to slip through? Is the U.S. just making a show of force to everybody?
I think it is largely a show of force, and the 3rd carrier isn't quite there yet. So they've really been doing this with 1 carrier battle group and a couple of destroyers and the Marine Expeditionary Unit. Those ships are there, but they're covering a large expanse of water, far from shore, because they don't want to be hit by the apparently already sunken Iranian Navy, but apparently it has enough which it can still threaten our ships. So we're standing back offshore quite a bit, and this area, how are we? We have radars, but if the ships that want to go through are hugging the coast, they're not in international waters. That's a safe place, or they are going silent, or they're not squawking their true identity. They're posing as a different identity, and some of them are just getting lucky because we don't have enough helicopters and coverage and radar coordination to really find every ship in that very broad area. That's why I said it doesn't really. Trump uses the word blockade, but in Navy parlance, I'm not sure it meets the full blockade criteria.
It makes sense because the Iranian military has posted videos of it seizing ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Those vessels were reportedly escorted into Iranian territorial waters. So how could Iran have accomplished all that without drawing fire from the U.S. Navy?
Well, the U.S. Navy is far away. What we hear from Mr. Trump, he paints a picture in Washington of what he thinks is happening. But the reality, I think, is very different. And, Iran is very capable of doing what it intends to do in its territorial waters, which most of these waters that we're talking about really are in the territory. They're right offshore of Tehran. So they have the logistics capability. They have the just cause. This is their water. They were attacked. They are defending their commerce. All of the things you need to be successful, Iran has, and the U.S. has none of those things. I mean, there is no just cause. We're not defending our own waters. We're far from home. We can't even feed the sailors on some of our ships. So Anyway, it makes sense to me that Iran has the upper hand here. Now, that doesn't mean that the United States is not going to restart this war, but Iran has the upper hand.
Let's talk about the domestic situation back in the United States, because the Pentagon recently fired its Navy secretary, announcing his immediate departure. What's your reaction to this, particularly amid the tensions with Iran?
Yeah, it seems pretty unusual that we would fire, or that Secretary Hegseth would fire so many people that he needs, because the Army guys that they fired 2 weeks ago were really of critical importance in running the Army. The Navy Secretary doesn't really run the Navy, but apparently he asked a question or gave an answer that the president didn't like, and so they got rid of him. So now they have a guy, the next one who's stepping into that role, who understands that he needs to be a yes man. And the way that Trump and Hegseth are using the U.S. Navy puts our Navy, and has been for some time, even with Venezuela, puts our Navy in the crosshairs of the International Criminal Court. You know, we are using our Navy as a pirate Navy, and we are telling it to do things that are illegal on the high seas. We are demanding that it do things that are illegal under the U.S. Constitution. So it's a big problem, and I'm sure that the Navy leadership is aware of this and is pushing back. So I think that's part of it. It's really a bad sign that we are firing so many people in the midst of what should be something that all our greatest military minds are focused on. This is a problem that needs to be solved. We have a strategy problem. We have a peace problem, and we need smart people communicating in Washington so that we can get to the right answer. And instead of doing that, we just fire people that ask the wrong questions.
Do you think the sacking of the Navy Secretary was an issue of a lack of expertise or more of a loyalty issue?
I'm pretty sure it's a loyalty issue. I think that my initial thought was that the secretary had pushed back on the misuse of the Navy. The media here in the United States has since said that the Navy secretary did not want to punish Congressman Kelly for reminding sailors that they don't have to follow illegal orders. So there was a court case, and the court said you have to leave the congressman alone. We have free speech in this country. And I think Hegseth demanded that the Navy pull this guy's pension and punish him in some way, contrary to the law. That's what they put out in the media as the reason for the firing of the naval secretary. But I think it goes deeper than that. I think that's just one symptom.
And meanwhile, Iranian media has issued a report about the vulnerability of undersea cables passing through the Strait of Hormuz and how devastating it could be if they were somehow destroyed. What do you think about that?
I think that's a real problem, and I think Iran has fully figured out how to target those cables, as well as other things that we don't really typically think of as military targets, in order to destroy the economic capacity and capabilities of the entire region. And I think Iran has to threaten that, because Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and the U.S. and Israel both have nuclear weapons. So in a sense, I think announcing and explaining the level of global destruction that Iran can cause in the region, these cables, among other things, is very important. So it's the tool that they have to use, since they don't have a nuclear weapon.
All right, Karen Kwiatkowski, retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.